Thirsting. Today's message is called Thirsting for a New Life. Hope can be in short supply when you are a woman who has been alienated from your community. But hope takes many forms. In today's lesson, it is living water at a well and encountering a person who changes her life. It has been a long and tiring walk through Samaria. So Jesus stops and sits down by the well while his disciples go to buy food in the village. And that's when physical and spiritual needs collide in that encounter at the well, and a conversation full of insight and teachable moments begins to unfold. In the heat of a noonday sun, an unnamed Samaritan woman comes to the well alone. Jacob's well was very deep and wide, and Jesus had no bucket. So he asked the woman to give him a drink, giving her an opportunity to see the face of Christ in a stranger. Anna Carter Florence says, "There's something beautifully simple in the staging of this scene as well as its premise. Jesus is thirsty at the well, and we are the ones with the bucket." The deeper metaphorical conversation that follows makes no sense until we really take that in. Can a little thing like a cup of cool water offered in love be the beginning of a salvation journey? Yes. And we will never know until we meet the stranger and tend to the human need first. But it's a missed opportunity on the woman's part, because with hands on her hips, she challenged him. "You, a Jewish woman, man, are asking me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink of water?" She knew that Jews often took a longer route on their way to Galilee, avoiding coming into Samaria altogether because the Jews and the Samaritans didn't get along. Not at all. But Jesus always took the road less traveled. He calmly answered her, "If you knew who I am, you would ask me for a drink of water, because I can give you living water." "And how would you get that water? You have no bucket, and this well is deep. Do you think you're better than Jacob, who dug this well and gave it to us?" Listening is a skill that requires both spiritual hospitality and respect. In 1 Corinthians 13, Paul taught us that love is patient, love is kind. And listening is a way to express this love. Jesus was a listener. Quick to listen and slow to speak, he listened to this woman as he slowly engaged her in conversation. Gently and patiently, he tried to get her to hear the words and the message behind the words that he spoke to her. You'll always be thirsty, you know. Her mind wandered as she took his words in. She knew he wasn't talking about water. He was talking about love. He knew that she was invisible and lonely, for a woman would not come to the well alone in the middle of the day, for hauling water was hard work. The women in those days were the water bearers, and they would come in the early morning when the temperatures were cooler. The well was a community hub. It was a place where women would gather, hear the latest gossip, catch up on the news of the village. But she was not a part of this. on the margins of her community, he chose to sit there with her by the well in broad daylight, which broke all of the social conventions of the day. But the longer he sat there, the easier it became. And she actually began to enjoy his presence. It was as still as the surface water at the well. My soul was calmed. My faith grew by the edge of the water as we sat in companionable silence. We understand how she felt, for water is a common Old Testament metaphor for the satisfaction of spiritual needs. The comfort of the 23rd Psalm we hear in the words, "He leads me beside still waters." The psalmist in Psalm 42 says, "As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, God." And Isaiah tells us, "With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation." This stranger knew how lonely I was, how isolated and disconnected I was in my own village. It was as if he had a sixth sense about me, able to see the restlessness in my soul, my yearning for human contact, the need to belong, to be loved, respected, and cared for by others, to be treated with compassion. And as he drew me into conversation, we began to chat about religion and faith and our ancestors. Truth was spoken to her even though she wasn't yet able to discern it. Deep in conversation, she slowly moves from disbelief to belief, from darkness to light, from blindness to sight, and from misunderstanding to understanding. Jesus names her broken relationships and speaks to her of the living water he offers, which will quench all thirst. He said, "I am the water of life. Come to me, all who are thirsty, and you will drink of the living waters and never be thirsty again." And slowly it begins to dawn on her that it was not the stranger who needed what only she could provide, water from the well, but it was she who needed what only he can give, living water. She marvels at his knowledge, calls him a prophet, asks for this living water, and then runs excitedly to tell her neighbors about the man whom she has met, imploring them to come and see for themselves. And as you heard, Jesus was invited to stay with the community, and he did so for a couple of days, preaching the good news. In this third week of Lent, today's reading offers us the imagery of thirst and of water, inviting us to reflect on our deepest needs and desires, both spiritual and physical. We have been given the gift of time for reflection, a pause in the busyness of our retired lives, to find the quiet center, to explore the deep spiritual truths that we have in the very depths of our being. And our Lenten journeys suddenly take on new meaning. So how do you refresh yourself with living water when you are parched, overwhelmed, or overburdened? What will fill your cup today? Have you thought about what it is that you deeply thirst for? So many of us are looking for meaning and purpose in our lives, especially when we get to retirement. because everything that has satisfied us to this point, we no longer have a job with any meaning. When have you had a conversation that made such a significant impact on your life? All of us need to ask ourselves, in what ways do I let social norms or cultural taboos restrict me from sharing love? Who is thirsty at the well in your life? We are the ones with the bucket. Greta Thunberg says that the one thing we need more than hope is action. And once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So what voices in this county are calling for news of God's living water? How or what can you or your community of faith do to provide for their need? Deep spirituality, bold discipleship, and daring justice. This is our call and vision from the wider church of the United Church of Canada. Bold discipleship and daring justice. Perhaps it is time for us to jump into the fray, to do something small that moves toward daring justice. Perhaps you'd like to attend the upcoming Community Housing Summit that Places for People is organizing. Or maybe you'd like to sleep in your car for a night. And if you don't want to do that, you can always sponsor someone who is doing it. Or you can donate to or volunteer in an organization that is addressing homelessness or food insecurity or raising awareness of the need for a basic income. Have one hard conversation at any one of those events. Or have a conversation with someone with lived experience of homelessness, unable to find affordable housing, or is food insecure and can't make ends meet on a minimum wage. Have one hard conversation from what you have learned and send an email to a municipal or provincial or federal leader about policy and planning. In this Lenten season, would that we all seek to be more like the love and grace and justice of Jesus. May it be so. Amen.